Joey Wright alongside Larry Larson and Mitch Kaminski, the first Bradley basketball men's pregame show of the new year. Guys, we have a lot to talk about. It's been a fun season in the Missouri Valley Conference. Larry, we'll start with you. Some takeaways from the first part of Valley play. I guess I can't say the first half because we're moving quick.
Yeah, we're already likely into the second half. I haven't done the math, but it's been quite the season. It really has been, from Missouri State being a disappointment to UNI and A.J. Green really dominating, but then at the same time, them falling on the road to two of the lower half teams in the Valley, SIU coming out with some surprises, and it's been a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, from the looks of it, it's going to be a very tight race down the stretch. You kind of got UNI, Bradley, and Loyola all kind of in a three-team race, and I think a lot of our preseason favorites with the Missouri State, like you said, has been very disappointing. Evansville, who pulled off the big upset against Kentucky, they're having all the problems with the head coach now. They haven't had a win in Valley play yet, so it's been very interesting thus far this season.
Yeah, and honestly, the Evansville thing is really surprising because they have talent on their roster. Nobody really expected them to finish in the top half of the Valley. But whenever you lose your head coach in the middle of the season in the way that they did, things probably aren't going to turn out too good. And it's not really ideal. But the top half of the conference, other than Missouri State, has really played out the way we thought it was going to be, with Loyola, UNI, and Bradley all up there. It's hard to pick a favorite in the Valley. I'm not going to try it because all those three teams, they're pretty much on the same level when it comes to team cohesiveness. And as for Missouri State, they've got the talent, but they don't have that cohesiveness.
No, they haven't seemed to put it together yet. I've been very impressed with UNI. I think A.J. Green is the best player in the conference right now. You watch him play, and he's the type of player that can take over a game late and dominate and go on a little scoring run all by himself. And I think his really coming out party was in the Missouri Valley Championship last year when he put on a clinic and single-handedly kept his team in the game, and it's carried forward this year. He's been fun to watch.
Guys, you mentioned Northern Iowa and, Evansville. They had two big wins early in the season, and that kind of goes along with what I want to ask next. Best moment in the Missouri Valley Conference thus far? Is it Northern Iowa's win against a then-ranked Colorado team? Is it Evansville's win against Kentucky? I think that's probably a pretty popular option because this early part of the season, and I say early part of the season as we move into the halfway part of Valley play, but the season thus far has seen a lot of big moments for Valley teams.
Yeah, it really has. I'm probably going to have to go with UNI's season as a whole. It's hard to pick just one moment. And honestly, it might be UNI's win over Bradley. Not my personal favorite moment. However, that really was a statement win for them. Because even though they beat a ranked Colorado team, they beat a good Power 5 conference team in South Carolina, coming to Bradley and beating the second-place Braves, that was a big statement and told everybody that, hey, the Panthers are the team to beat in the conference.
I would agree. I would think the biggest moment of the year, as you mentioned earlier, would probably be the upset of Kentucky, just because they're the #1 team in the country, kind of put the Valley on the map beginning of the year. Obviously, things haven't played out how Evansville wanted this year, but I think as you're just going pure Valley moments, that was kind of like a national spotlight there, and so that was very good for the conference.
Yeah, a lot of big moments, guys, this season for the Missouri Valley Conference. And let's talk about Bradley moments here. A big moment for the Braves here yesterday as we tape this against Illinois State. It was a big win for the Braves. Home court, the War on 74, it's always a big game, and it has them moving in a nice direction entering Indiana State this week.
Yeah, it really does. Great momentum going for the Braves right now. Great home crowd the other night. I really think that drove the Braves to the win. Even though they were down 2 at the half, they came out of the locker room, really exploded in the second half. They got a really good, complete team effort, and that really led to the win. And ISU just having a really tough season, but, the rivalry, it always moves the needle. It always packs the house.
Biggest crowd of the year.
Yep,
right?
Exactly. And that's always huge.
I was very impressed with the team depth that was on display. You're missing your 2 leading scorers right there. You're missing Darryl Brown, your point guard, and he hasn't missed much time with the Braves. And a lot of guys stepped up. It was kind of next man up mentality. You got Nate Cannell, who was scoring. Avile contributed. And Deshaun Henry, in the second half, he was really attacking the paint and the bigs, very fearless, attacking the tin. So that was nice to see. And I was also very impressed with their second half adjustments because Illinois State was shot pretty well the first half, and they came out, and Bradley did a nice job shutting them down defensively. So that's a sign of a good coach with their second half adjustments there. And the way they're playing team basketball, defense, that's going to help, especially because Bradley doesn't have a whole lot of guys that can take over a game offensively if they're not shooting well. So it's nice that they can kind of combat that with a good defense to keep them in a lot of games late in the year.
And going off that next man up mentality, that's one thing that Coach Wardle mentioned in the postgame press conference is he's really impressed not only with the guys that are available to play. They only had 7 available players last night. 8 were dressed and ready to go, but they only played 7. He said the energy in the locker room is still very, very good. Elijah Childs, Darryl Brown really taking charge, even though they're not playing. Yep. And even the redshirt guys, Kevin McAdoo, Terry Nolan, Rank Mast, all doing really good jobs in the locker room, keeping the energy up. And that's just positive to see, and it's a good sign for a team, even when you're banged up, to have everybody really involved.
And now you're getting guys that usually wouldn't get as many minutes, getting significant playing time yesterday. They had, I think, 4 or 5 guys that had like 30-plus minutes, so getting a lot of experience here with 2 of your better players out.
And especially Ville Tavanainen really stepped up huge yesterday, and it was, I don't want to say surprising, really good to see that depth again, especially in the backcourt without Darryl Brown, because he's the workhorse in the backcourt. That was his first missed game since his freshman season. So, like Wardle said in the postgame press conference, he said it was weird to not have Darryl out there, but Daniel Kingsby had a good game, 12 points. Ville and Nate Cannell stepped up with 18 points each.
Ville's really sorry to interrupt there, but Ville's really emerged as like their second shooter, which is kind of nice to see because really they rely a lot on Nate Cannell, but now that they have another option from outside, that helps a ton. I mean, Bradley thrives on scoring in the paint, but in today's day and age where you need the 3-point shot, it's kind of nice to have 2 options on the perimeter there.
And it's a good point that you mentioned there. They're not really relying on the paint like you would expect them to, especially now that Elijah Childs is out, but they did a really nice job last night of penetrating for layups. Yep. They didn't really feed the post players. They fed Jashawn Henry every once in a while, and he really came through in the second half, but it was the guards just driving to the bucket, and they really penetrated that soft zone defense for ISU that really, they didn't have a ton of big guys, and that helped the cause. But once Elijah Childs gets back, then you have a 2-headed monster because then that really opens up the 3-point shooting game again. And so the Braves' offense is really dynamic, and that really showed.
When you're able to put up 42 points in the paint like they did last night, you're going to win a lot of games. You're getting easy buckets down there, and they're kind of built for it. They got a lot of tall guys with Koch, obviously, Childs. So they got a bunch of big guys that can bang down there. And even Deshaun Henley, like I was saying, he had a couple nice moves in the paint, too, working his back to the basket and able to put it in the hoop.
And, guys, I think it just goes back to masterful coaching. I mean, you talk about all these things, but to do them with 7 players suited up, as Bradley had last night, I mean, just a heck of a job from Coach Wardle and the whole coaching staff to draw up a game plan, because I don't care what 7 you've got, you're going to have some tired players by the end of the game.
Yeah, absolutely, and that was a good adjustment, and he said that they really focused on slowing down the pace, and you saw that, especially off of makes from ISU.
I was a little disappointed how ISU came back in the second half. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Bradley, but they kind of came out flat. It didn't look like a whole lot of energy, and it was a rivalry game. You need a conference victory, and their effort in the whole second half there really came up short, and I think it showed on the scoreboard.
Well, and I want to jump in real quick, Larry, and talk to you about that because you were in the post-game press conference. Illinois State head coach Dan Muller was not happy after the game.
No, he wasn't, and he wasn't angry by any means. He was very upset. He almost really looked sad. He was downtrodden. It was the best way to describe it. And, in fact, somebody asked him, hey, what does the team need to do to be better down the stretch? And he said, well, how about they just play better? And that's just kind of a sign of a frustrated coach when you give an answer that literally. He said that they just came out flat in the second half. That's exactly right. That's exactly what they did. And he said they played hard, but they didn't compete, and there's a big difference between those two things. And that's one thing that you hear all the time in Brian Wardle's press conferences is compete, defend, rebound. And that's really the main focal points for Brian Wardle's coaching staff.
So, guys, then from one ISU to another, Bradley at Indiana State this Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern tip, 1 Central. And, Larry, that's going to be a fun one, and Mitch as well. It's going to be a fun one because not to leave Mitch out of the fray. I'm boxing him out. No, but, guys, that's going to be a fun one for a lot of different reasons. I think, first of all, it's the Red Sea road trip. Bradley student section annually takes 1 road trip a season. This year it is in Terre Haute, so a little bit of a home court advantage to some extent on the road, if that's the right way to phrase it. But Indiana State, Larry, they're a little bit improved this year. It's one of the better teams the Sycamores have fielded in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got some guys, especially in the backcourt. Tyreek Key is the guy that sticks out to me. He's a really good 3-point shooter and can also distribute if need be. Where the Sycamores really lack is the size. So in the paint, again, like we've mentioned throughout the show, one of Bradley's strengths. So I'm looking for a similar game plan than we saw at or versus Illinois State.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say with the size advantage there. Just attack the basket. Kind of same thing that you did. It'll be interesting to see if DB comes back and what the health status of Elijah Childs will be. But I think it's a very winnable game on the road. I think you just got to attack the basket, and I think the Braves will have some very good results in this one.
I know, Larry, you and I will both be there on the Red Sea bus, so, that'll be fun. Always fun. I like road trips, no matter what the circumstance. You throw road trip into the sentence, I'm in.
Quick little 3-hour drive to Terre Haute.
Yeah, it should be fun. And I didn't realize until the other day that it is an afternoon game, so, we'll leave a little early, get back, have plenty of time for an evening.
Terre Haute's popping at nightlife.
Oh, my God.
Saturday night out at Terre Haute.
It's going to be a fun game, guys, and real quick, let's get our picks to click, because for Bradley, whoever suits up can have a big game.
For me, my pick to click, I mentioned the post players. I'm going to have to go with Koch Barr. We have glazed over Koch Barr as of recently because it's been the guards that have been really doing all the scoring for the Braves. And I think Koch is due for a big game. He hasn't done a ton of scoring since the non-conference slate, and so he's my pick to click.
I'm going to ride some momentum. I'm taking Deshaun Henry. He had a big second half last game, and I think he's going to ride that momentum into this one. The Braves are probably going to need a little bit of scoring here, assuming that DB and Elijah Childs are still out. So I think he's going to step up, and I think he's going to have a big game in this one.
See how it all plays out. Braves and Sycamores in action this Saturday. And guys, looking elsewhere around the valley, a lot of big games this week. Start with our weekly pick'em here. I want to start with Northern Iowa and Loyola. A lot of people have that as the Valley game of the week, and for good reason. It's going to be a fun one.
Yeah, Loyola in first place. UNI tied for second with Bradley. And if Loyola wins, that really puts them in the driver's seat, and then they've just got Bradley to beat because they've already played UNI once, and if they win, they split the series. And that really gives them a good edge going into the rest of the season. But I'm going to have to go with UNI in Cedar Falls. Shooting teams always play better on their home floor. They haven't had a slip-up yet in Cedar Falls. I don't think that's going to change, and I think A.J. Green and company take care of business.
Yeah, I'm taking UNI as well, simply because they got the best player on the floor in A.J. Green. Big-time players make big-time plays, and it's a big game, so I think he's going to step up in this one because really a battle for first place here. So I am rolling with Northern Iowa in this one.
Consensus Northern Iowa. Next game, Missouri State and Drake. Talked about Missouri State earlier in the program not having the season a lot of people thought they would. I'm going to have to go with Missouri State in this one. Agree or disagree?
I agree. I'm going with the Bears on the road. I think they've got the more talented roster, as I mentioned earlier. Drake, you can never count them out. They're very well coached. Aaron DeVries has done a great job in 2 seasons over there, working with, I don't want to say completely inferior talent, but matching up against some of these other Valley schools. They've got bigger names and sometimes more size, but DeVries has done a phenomenal job at just keeping the Bulldogs competitive. And so whenever you play Drake, it's going to be a good game. I think this is going to be a good game, but I think Dana Ford is due for a break or two. They've got a lot of talent on that team, and talent usually eventually wins out.
Yeah. This one was tough. I didn't feel good about it either way, but I'm also going Missouri State. I think they're a little bit more talented, as you said, but it's really a coin flip game. I could see it going either way. It's going to be tough on the road, especially because Drake's no slouch. I mean, they've played a pretty competitive ball up to this point, but I think Missouri State, their talent is going to win out in the end, and they're going to win this one.
I think that's the longest road trip in the Valley, right? Springfield, Missouri, up to Des Moines, Iowa, or is Northern Iowa a little farther up?
Maybe Valparaiso to Springfield, Missouri.
That could be it. That could be it. Valparaiso and Southern Illinois, our third pick'em. What do we got?
Is it?
It's Evansville.
Is it Evansville?
Yeah.
And okay, our regular viewers know I'm usually good for about 2 of these 3 games. I can never quite remember the third. What do we have?
Evansville.